So, one of the ideas that I had read about with putting water
Hmm.
on the planets was something that used, instead of having a voxel um, or a fluid dynamic water, which would just tear the engine apart because it's not
Yeah.
built for it.
Right.
Um, is having a planetary water table. So basically, if you dug down deep enough, you'd come across this sphere of water.
You completely broke up there.
At what point did it?
I heard, um, let's see, what did I hear? I heard water table, you dig down deep enough, far enough, and then fear of water.
Sphere, like a
Sphere. Gotcha.
of water that kind of surrounds the planet. That's maybe a couple. Um, the problem is, so much of a planet would be at water level that it'd be real easy to dig down into the water table.
Hmm.
So that I see a problem with that, but I mean, this is space engineers, not really deep sea excavators.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, little known secret, not really. I was never really on board with planets to begin with.
Ah,
Now, I don't hate having them. I think they're cool. And they're definitely interesting and fun to try to engineer things on. And
yes.
that's the point why they're here. But I was never really all that on board with planets. I mean, it is space engineers, not planet engineers. But,
My
hmm,
my only counter
whoops.
in that argument, and I acknowledge that it's a fairly weak argument,
Hmm.
is that depend I leaving one of the most significant engineering tasks of modern times is leaving a planet. So, and that you leave a planet, get in space. That turns into a rehashed argument, but I don't think planets were implemented particularly well, and I think that's an engine limitation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm out of energy, and my oxygen is low. Let's land in the blue skeleton.
I was actually kind of put off by by the infinite universe a little bit because I'd gotten so used to the way that the asteroid fields would spawn in before they
Ah,
did the infinite universes.
yeah,
I really missed that cluster because it actually felt like an area where you were sent to go mine and build on.
yeah, I can
Now,
see that.
now they're so far apart, it doesn't even feel right. I mean, I realize that in reality, like in the asteroid belt that we have, they're probably not that close together just because of how far apart everything actually is. But again, I go back to the argument of this is a game.
Yeah,
I remember one time I was playing, and as a matter of fact, it was on my single player series. I spent literally like, how long was it? I think it was a It was 45 kilometers away. I think it was. Took like 5 full in-game minutes just to get to an asteroid that had silicon on it. That's boring.
Yes, I agree.
Do I want to change that? Nah.
And people don't want to be bored.
No.
Which, I mean, you have to make some concessions to gameplay. I acknowledge that. I
Hmm.
think most people acknowledge that. Like
Yeah.
the jump drives are something that came because of the uh, infinite world
Hmm.
between asteroids and um, the planets, so you could get between the planets. But
Hmm. Certainly. And unless you have waypoints, it can be a little iffy, sometimes even fun from the mishaps, playing with them.
mm-hmm.
So, yay. Oh yeah. Okay. But none of it made me mad. I mean, planets didn't make me mad. The infinite universe didn't make me mad. It was a little off-putting.
Okay. So what's something you would like feature? Any if you could make one request of Keen to put something in Space Engineers, and you knew that they would put it in, what would that be?
Ooh. I tell you what, let me think about that one, and you go ahead and give your opinion on that one first, because I'm not entirely sure.
See, I'm not. That's. I mean, you've got a lot of people that would be like fixed pistons.
Oh, sure. But
At
actually adding something in, not just repairing or changing something or this, that, and the other. I guess I'm gonna go with what we've talked about before. More upgrade modules.
okay,
Like, by God, I think we've all complained about how slow grinders and welders are on ships. Maybe some upgradable suits would be nice, so we don't have to go as far, well, energy packs, something of that nature, to make the energy last longer. Since we've got oxygen and hydrogen to make both of those last longer, kind of need something for energy too. Um, Something like that maybe, but most of all, I think just some more upgrade modules for ships, for like the tools, maybe the what do they call it, the gyros, because ships with like 200 freaking gyros in it, that's a bit, you know what I mean?
yeah, okay. It hit me what I would ask for
Hmm.
modular systems. I don't know if you've how much of the From the Depths gameplay I've put up that you've watched.
A little bit.
They have things in there like the guns.
Hmm.
You have a firing piece, okay? Firing piece is the main part of the gun. You then build off of that uh, your barrel, and you have basically block equivalent of a barrel. And the longer you put the barrel on, the more variation uh, it can cause. Like your accuracy increases, but your you have to hit the sweet spot to get the perfect speed.
Hmm.
You can change it based on what sort of ammo modules you put on, whether it fire, at least with cram cannons, whether it fires an EMP round, an explosive round, a what else on there? EMP, explosive. Um, my mind's wandered. I'm sorry. Uh, but yeah, you get a large variation of possible weapons, and
Right.
you actually have to engineer it. They do the same thing for um, fuel refineries. You can make something that is very efficient, but it just happens to be slow. So you get more resource for what you put in. Or you make
Hmm.
something that's very fast, but it wastes material. You have engines. I'd love to have a modular reactor that I could build my own reactor and have it of different size, different capability, based on of what I build modularly. Um,
That would be pretty sweet.
Thrusters, same thing with thrusters. Like you have a basic system for thrusters, like the for hydrogen, you'd have the bell, you'd have the reaction chamber, you'd have gas compressors, and depending on how many gas compressors or how big you build the reaction chamber, you you get a different result.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. I know there's been one mod that's gave us something of modular play, like modular cockpits, and one that I was using modular thrusters that had, you could build whatever shape thruster you wanted, but that's not entirely what you're talking about. But I've got the idea what you mean, and that would be pretty awesome. And I gotta clean up my mess here. And speaking of suits that need upgrades because my energy's low.
Yeah, the I honestly I don't think things like carrying the battery around would is really a new idea. It's just a rehash of an existing
Yeah,
concept.
yeah. Oop, I ain't done. I was looking at oxygen. Well, I mean, just an upgradable suit would be nice because that would fall back on the environmental hazards.
Yeah,
An upgraded suit can now deal with the radiation from said reactor that off-gases radiation. Now you don't have to worry about encasing it.
mm-hmm.
But just like the tools, if you lose your body, you go back to the basic, and then you might be screwed on your own ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I liked about with From the Depths. If your ship, actually, I feel like there's more engineering in From the Depths. Unfortunately, there's not much of a survival aspect to it because it's all you build a ship in whatever mode in your build mode, whatever, and you just are attacked by AI ships that are built the same way yours does. There's nothing like going out like survive, not a personal survival.
Right.
It's more of a strategy game survival. And honestly, I think that if you looked at the way From the Depths does their weapons,
Hmm.
most weapons mods would become obsolete fairly quickly because you could build Gatling turrets. You could build, depending on how they did it, um, a lot of different things, and you would have to balance out. I mean, how well do I armor this turret cap? Because it might get shut off. Or, I mean, we already have rotors. Just give us the ability to, say, have a block that you put on the rotor and the block has the same turret AI that the Gatling guns or the missile turrets have, and it takes control of the rotor as a base.
Okay, I've got a new one for you. Easier block placement. Placing windows. Good God.
Yeah, windows can be a pain.
Gotta line it up perfectly right there on that edge. And I'm gonna get on the Sage train. And yeah, compound blocks, please. That'd be nice.
Compound blocks would be nice. But I'm still sticking with the weapon systems and engine system modular setup that, like what From the Depths has, because that would be very fun. I mean, it doesn't have to be nearly as complex as some of the other games that have attempted it. Like, there's no reason for us to actually have to wire in all the solar panels on our solar array.
Right.
That change, to me, I find that as irritating and tedious as some people are claiming just an additional food bar would be. I recommended From the Depths to you, but you haven't really done anything on that.
Not yet.
Right? Okay. So, they recently implemented, and kind of in the air recently, implemented steam engines in From the Depths.
Oh, really?
Yes. And you, right now in From the Depths, you only have one resource, which is called material.
Right.
Well, in From the Depths, if you were going to use your steam engine, that's the fuel that it uses. But, I mean, we could do something different in Space Engineers, because, I mean, a nuclear reactor, really, when you boil it down, is just a steam engine.
Yeah.
So, what they have a single block that is called the boiler controller, which is basically what would in real life terms be equivalent to is the boiler is the firebox and the control systems for said firebox on an actual not reactor, but boiler system, steam
Right.
engine. Now, if you... And I'm kind of getting distracted by looking at what I'm doing. But what they have in there is you have that control box, which is basically the starting point for your steam engine. Then you have a series of blocks after that are the boiler, which, depending on your size, is either a 1x1 block or a 3x3x1 block. And you can take as many boilers as you want off of that. And the boilers, basically, because more boilers, more steam, more power. Granted, you have to burn more fuel to get the power up that high on something that big, but still, it roughly translates. So, Then from the boiler, you have pipes that come off, and those go to, since from the depths is in on ships, they have both steam pistons, which is what old ships used, and of course steam engines and things like that. And then they have turbines, turbine generators, which is pretty much what you'd use in Space Engineers, which is the turbines. So I think that whole system would work pretty well. You'd have your reactor containment vessel, which would be basically the equivalent to what we have now, and what your the firebox or steam engine control, or whatever they call boiler control, in from the depths. Then you'd have, and I have a doggy coming in to say hi.
I can hear that.
Poppy.
Happy puppy.
Yeah. But then you'd have the a boiler. Basically, you could set up the boiler from the reactor containment, which would pump the reactor is basically the heat source, creates the water, the steam. Steam gets pumped through the system, and you can either have the steam be released, or you can set up a system to contain and recirculate the steam, which gives us another use for hydrogen, or ice, which is creating water for, and I have latency issues all of a sudden.
Yeah, that was strong lag.
I think that would be a better. You'd have more engineering in doing setups like that. And not saying that they'd have to get rid of the like the small reactor and the large reactor that we already have, but you set them up so that these are fairly inefficient in comparison to what you could build with the other reactor systems.
Right, they'd be your basic starter reactor, and if you want better, you got to engineer it.
Right. Same with the refineries. Like, you could custom build a refinery that is more aimed towards, say, processing uranium, or something that's more more towards the heavier metals. I mean, instead of having the blast furnace, we have to engineer our own blast furnace. Mind if I walk through your
Go right ahead.
How are we going to get up?
Hang on.
Gonna put stairs in?
Nope. I had planned on just using jetpacks.
Okay.